Welcome to Ecom Insiders Podcast. My name is Debbie, and this event is sponsored by SPCTEK. Today's guest name is Dano Falk. He is a German entrepreneur, graphics designer, web designer, and online marketer who made Malaysia his second home in 2011. He started doing online stuff about 1996, and he's built multiple online businesses and agencies over the past 21 years, or over 20 years. Dano, thank you for joining us today.
Wow, you know everything about me, Debbie. I'm impressed. You know my whole story. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure, and yeah, we've been preparing this for quite some time. We have quite a bit of time difference, but we figure out a time to speak to each other, and yeah, it's again, it's a pleasure to be on your show.
Well, I'm pretty excited because today we're going to talk about Amazon expansion into Japan. Now, are you currently living in Japan?
Not exactly. I'm living in Malaysia, which is kind of on the same side of the planet like Japan. So we are on kind of we only 1 hour apart from Japan in terms of time zones. So it's kind of close, but no, I'm not in Japan now.
All right. Well, I know that you want to start off with a presentation and tell us a little bit about what's going on in Japan and why it's advantageous for Amazon sellers to get into it. So I'm going to let you start by sharing your screen with us.
All right, so let's just get to it. So this is all about the lucrative potential of Amazon Japan, and I just want to. I mean, there are basically three parts of this whole thing. It's about what is the opportunity, what are the challenges, and how can a Western brand get started on Amazon Japan, and this is obviously also something we can help with. So my introduction, we've done this already, so thank you very much for that. I think the first thing we have to be aware of is the Japanese culture. If you look around, like how the Japanese culture works, it's quite different. It's a blend of ancient traditions and modern innovations, and it's very different from the Western culture in many ways. So one part of it is this respect and etiquette. So there is a strong emphasis on politeness, respect, and hierarchy. Then we have this Japanese society value of group harmony, which emphasizes collective well-being over individual desires. This is reflected in decision-making processes and a focus of consensus building, which can contrast with the individualistic nature of many Western cultures. So, Japanese people, they value the society over the individual interest, which is quite different from what we are familiar with. Then there is a rich heritage of traditional arts, such as tea ceremonies and flower arranging, calligraphy, theater. So these artistic pursuits also, are quite different from what we know. The Zen philosophy have a deep cultural significance and set them apart from traditional arts in many Western countries. The appreciation for nature is big. So the seasonal changes are deeply integrated into Japanese culture. Events and traditions are often tied to the seasons, and the beauty of cherry blossoms during spring and autumn foliage are celebrated nationwide. Anime is another interesting part of it. So it comes from the English word animation, actually, and it's a distinct form of animated entertainment that holds immense cultural significance in Japan. Then, last but not least, the language. So the language is really, really different. So Japanese language has been heavily influenced by Chinese over the centuries, especially in the areas of vocabulary and writing system. The writing system in particular includes kanji, borrowed from characters from Chinese, hiragana, a native phonetic script, and katakana, primarily used for foreign loan words. And also Latin is also included for specific words. So if you just look at the word Tokyo, it can be spelled in 3 different ways. And, as a Western person, when you see these words in Japanese, you would never guess that all these 3 words actually mean Tokyo. So that is kind of just a little heads up that, things like search terms and so forth can be very different from what we are used to in the West. Public holidays is another big topic. So, when we first started with our first Amazon Japan client, we kind of started preparing for Christmas sales, like what we do in the US, until we realized like there is no Christmas in Japan. Surprise, surprise. So if you look at the list here, so this is kind of the relevancy of Japanese and US holidays by, how relevant they are. And yes, there's New Year's Day, there's the coming age of day, whatever that is. Of course, I'm not Japanese, so most of these things also don't really make sense to me. But it's just we have to take note of the difference of the holiday seasons and what we want to address when we like create sales promotions. We still have Prime Day. So this is still kind of this is the common ground between the US and Japan, but other public holidays can be very different. Let's look at some numbers here. Population, we have 123 million people in Japan compared to 340 in the US. We have disposable income. GBT per capita is quite high, and less than 30% of Japanese people speak English. This is maybe like the most relevant part of this chart, that we have to realize that if we simply put English listings to the Japanese market, it's not going to work. So we have to localize our listings. Ethnic group is for me also quite fascinating. So 98% of Japanese people are actually Japanese. In the US, this is it's a very different story. And when I did my research, I was kind of amused that actually Germans are the biggest nationality in the US. Would you have thought of that? So to me, that was a big surprise. So we have 13% Germans, then we have the African Americans, we have Mexicans, we have Irish and all that. So the US is obviously much more mixed, but in Japan, you can say like 98% of Japanese are Japanese. So it's kind of very straightforward. Largest city obviously is Tokyo, 37 million, which is double the size of New York City. And we have a very decent amount of Amazon users, which is like around 100 million, and which is the 4th biggest Amazon marketplace on the planet. If we look at marketplaces, like what are the different e-commerce marketplaces in the US and in Japan, we can see that, in the US, we all know that Amazon is the biggest, and we have eBay, Walmart, Craigslist, and so forth, Etsy. In Japan, number 1 is Amazon, and they managed to take over Rakuten, which is the traditional online marketplace in Japan. It works very differently from Amazon, and if to sell on Rakuten, you actually need a local entity. To sell on Amazon Japan, you do not need a local entity. So that is maybe one of the biggest differences. And also, like everything that happens in your seller account is the way that you know it. So it's you can, when you understand Amazon US, you can apply. You will not be lost in Seller Central in Japan, because it works exactly the same way, and it's in English. So you can navigate most of it, except that seller support. When you get these messages from Seller Central, they will be in Japanese, and then you will need some translation to understand what is Amazon actually telling you right now. So let's look at the opportunities first. So the market size is obviously the biggest one. So there we have like 123 million people, the 4th biggest marketplace. We have a big GDP per capita, a strong economy, and we have a cultural affinity for online shopping. We have appreciation for Western goods, which can be really in favor of Western brands, because Japanese people, they do appreciate Western stuff. So like, especially like beauty products, fashion stuff, luxury goods, all these Western brands are quite highly appreciated in Japan. Proximity to China, that's a big one, because if you manufacture in China, needless to say that, your shipping cost and time will be a fraction of what it takes to send your stuff to California. Reviews can be transformed from your existing listing. So that's another good news, that when you have a working listing in the US and you have maybe 100 or 500 reviews on your listing, you can simply bring these reviews over to your Japan listing. So you don't have to start from scratch collecting reviews. You can actually benefit from all your existing reviews in another market like the US or even in Europe. And one last thing is get ahead of your competitors in wherever you're selling right now. This awareness of Japan is still quite low. So to be the person or to be the brand who actually takes note of this opportunity can be another great opportunity for you, because many brands simply do not start selling in Japan. So you won't have to compete with those people who are you competing with right now in your current marketplace. Then we also have challenges. Surprise. So despite of all this Zen stuff and all this minimalism, Japanese culture can be quite surprising, like in like how dense and how packed their multimedia stuff is, and how they present themselves. Like these are just a bunch of magazines that I put together here. And if you look at these magazine covers, I mean, this, it's Japanese, but still, if this was in English, it would be still quite overwhelming. So they tend to be like very intense in kind of how they gather information together. And which of course reflects into how we design our listings. So when we want to localize our listings, we have to first of all we have to do our keyword research, which again is very different, because the same word can be written in like 4 different ways or even 5 different ways. So we have to be aware of all these different spellings and all these different ways how a keyword is written. The copywriting also has to reflect that, and our infographics should also be like adjusted to the Japanese culture. We have import regulations, so this can be a bit of it's not really a deal breaker or showstopper, but we just have to be aware that if everything that touches the body or goes in the body needs to be certified. So even like a pan or like a spoon, everything that touches food needs to be certified. So before we start simply shipping stuff to Japan, we have to be aware of whether we have to be certified or not. And then there's a process to do the lab test in Japan, which is all doable, but we just need to be aware of this. Then another challenge is driving external traffic. So if we have, if we sell on Amazon US, then we mostly would have our brand website at least, or maybe our Shopee store, and then we would have some social media presence. All these things can be challenging in Japan, because first of all, your Japanese website needs to be translated into Japan. Then social media channels work quite differently. So Facebook is not such a big thing. The biggest social media channel is called Line. And so the whole off Amazon presence works a bit different from what we are used to and what we are familiar with. Other things to consider is like your trademark approval. So if you have a brand, of course, you want to use A+ content. You want to register your brand. So that is something also you have to take care of. You need an importer. So you need a company on the ground who would who would receive your products at the port and who would do the customs clearance, which is not a big deal. We have a partner who does that. And if your product is complex to a certain extent, where you really need people to understand how to use the product, you would also have to consider like to localize your inserts, your packaging, your instructions. So, I mean, if it's a basic thing, like a spoon, then you don't need then it's fine. You don't have to. There is no regulation that says you have to translate everything. But if you want to make your customers happy and you have a difficult product or a product that needs instructions, then we have to translate them. Yeah. So, and that's basically it. So the roadmap to how to get started would be to evaluate. So what we do is this marketplace assessment. Normally, when we start working with a client, we invite them to do this assessment with us where we check what is happening for their specific products and brand in Japan. What are the sales looking like? What are the reviews like? What the competitors, the price points. So we want to make sure that, it would make sense to take this endeavor and to take the risk of going into this new marketplace. So the marketplace research, as I mentioned, we have to go through what's ever happening in your specific category in Japan. We want to check the import regulations, like how much effort would be to import your products, to get them certified, check your trademark availability, and that's it. So then we get started. So we get an importer with this importer of record, the 3PL logistics partner who will actually receive and do the customs clearance for your products. We will create your listings. And then we start sending your inventory. We set up the PPC campaigns and start working on the off Amazon presence. Yeah, and that's basically the entire story. And we can obviously help with all of the above. But I don't want to promote myself too much here, so I will just stop sharing and I will be happy to answer any questions.
So there are a few things I want to ask you. I think it's really
Yeah.
fascinating. Um, what what brands and categories really do well in Japan?
Yeah, that is a complex question. I mean, obviously, I don't have the 360 overview of all the brands that are doing well in Japan, but I see like household items, I see beauty products, luxury products, I see supplement brands doing well, some like electronics brands doing well. So it's very hard to say like which one would be doing well. Because we really need for the specific brand, if they are interested to check on what how it would look like for them, we really have to look at this specific category, because there are just too many to say like, this is the one that works and this is the one that doesn't work. There
Mm.
are it's just too much to kind of answer this question like in 1, 2, 3 brands. But I would say household items, luxury goods, supplements, beauty products, they tend to do really well. Yes.
So I'm wondering, because in Amazon US, we've seen a big amount of Chinese come in and start listing and selling. Do you have the same
Yeah.
thing on Japan's Amazon?
Yes, we do see a lot of Chinese sellers, obviously, because of the proximity. That's another reason that they, for them, it's obviously easy to ship from China to Japan. What we also see that Chinese sellers tend to be sluggish in terms of branding and in terms of
Mm.
localizing their listings. So I think if you have a decent brand message and you take your branding seriously, I think you still have a good advantage compared to most Chinese sellers, because they seem to just go down this cheap route.
Mm.
And unfortunately, I would say Japanese people are quite aware of quality. So
Good.
they do appreciate quality, so they don't just go for the cheapest stuff. And I think that's where like a legit brand with a message, with the quality control, and with delivering like real value, still has the like an upper hand towards the cheaper Chinese guy.
Now, I know you mentioned a little bit about like rules and regulations and stuff like that. Of course, in the US, we're familiar with some of the certifications and stuff we need. What are some of the specific industry standards and certifications that somebody might need to get onto Japan?
Well, as I mentioned, if you are selling anything that people can eat or they put on their body, beauty products, supplements, food products, obviously, and also like some household items, uh, these products need to be certified, and there is a two-step process for that. So we the first step is to just check your specific product if it needs certification, and we can provide this service very easily with our partner on the ground. So we can do the first check, like, do you need to be certified or not? That's the first step, and this, I think the cost of that is like $30 per ASIN per product. And that's how you get the answer if you need to get certified or not. If you need to get certified, then your product has to be submitted to a lab test,
Ah,
and it has to be a Japanese laboratory. It cannot be like something from the US, and this will cost around $200 to kind
mhm.
of fulfill this lab test. The danger here is if you're selling something that is food related and this product has like 10 pieces in it, like a very complex Tupperware, for example, or like a lunchbox, which consists of 10 different compartments of all 10 different, materials. That's when it gets a bit challenging. But basically, I would say if you have a product that has like doesn't have like too many different parts involved in it, it's something that would cost like around $200 and will take about 2 months.
So, what are the local tax implications of doing business in Japan?
Yeah, that I would say they are very, very friendly. So you only have, excuse me. So you only have to start to apply for a Japanese tax number if you're doing more than 10 million yen in sales per year. And this number, so yeah, $1 is around 150 yen. So I have to do the math. What would be 10 million
Okay.
yen? I
But
don't have it in my head right now.
you'd have to be into the millions, million plus in sales.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, 10. Yeah, it's definitely a six figure in sales, and then still you have 3 years of time to
Ah,
start submitting your taxes. So it's kind of a very friendly framework they have. So even if you're doing more than 10 million yen in sales per year, they will still give you 3 years to kind of apply for your tax number and submit the taxes and all that. So and even if in year 4 you're doing less than 10 million, you don't have to pay any taxes. So it's rather
mhm.
friendly in terms of
Okay.
taxes.
All right. Well, that's very different from our culture.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. I know that's not
Oh,
IRS stuff.
you said that the Japanese are very an online shopping culture. Can you explain a little bit about how prevalent the online shopping is and how the Japanese market actually compares to some other markets?
I would say, I mean, Japanese people are very tech savvy. So, I
Uh,
mean, we do have the same phenomenon in the West and in Europe that people are on their phones all the time. I think that's even heavier in Japan. So I think people especially young people are even more tech savvy and even more like phone driven, than Western people. So, shopping online is definitely is been the biggest thing in Japan for a long time. And before Amazon came into the picture, they were selling on Rakuten mostly and on Yahoo. But yeah, I mean, I would say shopping online is definitely the biggest channel. I don't have the exact numbers how it compares to retail, but online shopping is definitely a huge phenomenon in the Japanese culture.
So I think one of the things that you showed that was kind of like was the language thing, that they have 3 or
Yeah,
4 different languages and stuff like that.
three
So
plus one. Yeah.
I'm assuming that you have like assistance from some types of programs and stuff like that that help you to do
Yeah.
the keyword research.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
luckily, so the first stage is helium-10, which luckily does work in Japan. So
Oh,
we
good.
can actually get our basic keyword research from helium-10. But then there are like several more levels to it. So we also, of course, we engage native speakers, people in Japan on our team who will then do like the second level of research of keywords, who would also proofread the listings, the translations. I mean, ChatGPT is doing a pretty good job translating from English to Japanese. But we still, of course, we need a human native
Yeah.
speaker who will double check everything. And I mean, many times we still hear like even if we do all our job in GPT, whatever, that no, this is not. Sometimes, things are just being called differently.
Yeah.
Like simple things like a laptop bag will not be called a laptop bag. They will call it something completely different. And so that's why we do need people on the ground who can actually understand, who actually grew up with this culture. But helium 10 is what we use for the first level of research, and then we continue with native speakers and people who can actually make a educated decision on this.
And I think for some people in the US who maybe haven't traveled and stuff, they don't really understand some of the cultural nuances. So I'm
Mm,
assuming that you also get assistance from your native speakers in kind of some of those nuances, what would not
yeah.
translate at all into the Japanese culture.
Mm. Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. So there are some things, and I mean, I'm not a Japanese person, so I that's why we obviously that's why we work with native speakers and with Japanese people, because again and again there are surprising facts which come up, like where we hear like, okay, a Japanese person would never say that, or they would never read that or
Yeah.
write that. So it's very important to have this local
Yes.
advice.
Yeah. Now, does Amazon Japan have like an FBA? Do they ship for you? I noticed you
Oh
talked about
yes.
3PL. So there is an Amazon FBA.
Oh yeah. And I mean, Amazon works, I would say, almost exactly the same way it does in the US, except we don't have any posts, stuff like that in Japan. But FBA, yes, FBA is still the number one shipping method. I would recommend to every client to make use of it, unless you're selling, I don't know, couches or whatever. Uh, and then again, we come into an area where, like in Japan, people have very limited spaces. That, like, one of the cultural things we need to take note is that Japanese houses and apartments and gardens are much smaller
Yeah.
compared to what we know from the West. So if you're selling like big like uh, furniture for the garden or something, it's probably not going to work. And so, but yeah, it's basically for every FBA is available and is very much recommendable. So there are 6 warehouses in Japan, 6 Amazon warehouses, and our 3PL provider happens to have his warehouse next to one of them. So
Oh,
one of these warehouses, they can literally like carry over the inventory into the warehouse of onto the Amazon warehouse. But yeah, there are 6 of them, and yes, FBA is just as relevant as in the US.
Now, of course, if they're building a brand and stuff like that, they're going to be interested in what are some of your key marketing strategies to actually build a strong brand presence in Japan.
Mhm. Yeah, the first question is, do you have a brand presence in the West? Is this like something that people have already heard of? If that's the case, you're already like off to the races. If you don't have a brand and if you're selling high ticket items, people will not just buy your product on Amazon, even though they consider higher ticket items. They will want to see like proof of your brand, and they will want to see like an off Amazon presence on Google, for example. They will Google your brand name, and then they will want to find something which represents your brand. So the very first thing that we recommend is to have a Japanese brand presence, like a website which is under your name and
Oh,
is
okay.
in Japanese, so people can actually understand what you're saying. So that's number one. Then, of course, we can do social media on like TikTok is still quite dominant in Japan. We can work with influencers, and I think that is one of the biggest opportunities in Japan to find the right people who would promote your products, who have a certain following, reputation, and all that. We do Google ads are still quite relevant, I think. So to just run Google ads for specific products and for your brand, that can make a lot of sense. So these will
Yeah.
be like the first things that we would look at, to have number one, like a Japanese brand presence in some way, that your website is available in Japanese, and then to start building a social media presence and to work with influencers. And Google is very strong in Japan as well, so that also makes sense. This whole line thing, it's a bit of a tricky story how to advertise online, because you cannot open a line account as a foreigner.
Mm.
You need a local representative to open this account, but it's doable. So the biggest social media channel is Line, but for that we need to work with a local with a local entity,
Mm.
which is doable as well. But yeah, I think that is basically the process.
Are you starting to see more and more US sellers come into the Japan market?
I would say so, yes. I think, I mean, we have been doing quite a lot of promotion for Amazon Japan over the past 3 years. I have been on quite a few webinars and podcasts, and I've written quite a bit of content. So I think, yes, I think this awareness is growing, and we see more and more brands coming in, and I think that's a great thing. And I congratulate every Western brand who, after, of course, doing the assessment and making like an educated decision, actually venture into this market, especially if they manufacture in China.
Ah, good. Okay, so I didn't really say it when I was doing your introduction, but your company is actually called DefDevice,
Yeah, yeah.
DefDevice.
Hmm.
Now, tell us how DefDevice actually assists the sellers in expanding their businesses on Amazon Japan. Maybe more details about your company and some of the services you
Hmm.
provide.
Sure. So yeah, we started this journey like around 5 years ago, when a friend of mine approached me and asked me if I can help him with Amazon Japan, which came to me like as a surprise, but I took on the challenge. So we went through all the learning curves and we kind of figure out how to do all this. So as of today, we are working with a local partner in Japan. So I would say we do everything digital and they do everything physical. So
Okay.
they do all this, like they receive the inventory, they do the customs clearance, they ship to Japan, to the Amazon warehouse, they do the labeling if you need FNSKU labels, they can do repackage, I mean, so everything physical, our partner does it. Everything digital, like setting up the Amazon account, localizing the listings, running PPC campaigns, doing all the Amazon stuff, creating A+ content, whatever, finding influencers. This is what we do. Yeah. So basically, together with our partner, we provide like a 360 service for Western brands. So when somebody wants to start selling in Japan, we can take care of all the listing localization and everything digital, and our partner on the ground can do everything that is related to managing the inventory.
Okay. Now your website, is it a .com or
Yes, it's
okay.
devdevice.com. Yeah. And if you want
Okay.
to learn, and our Japan service is devdevice.com/Japan.
Okay. So do you do these services for other regions of Amazon as well?
Well, we do. Yeah, we have clients in the US. I mean, I've been selling on Amazon US for 5 years, so I'm obviously familiar with how this whole Amazon US market works. I am German, so I also am capable of assisting brands selling on Amazon Germany. So yeah, I mean, I would say we focus on US, Germany, and Japan. These are like our focus markets. But basically, yeah, we can help with basically any region. But our strength and our focus is US, Germany, and Japan.
Okay, well, great. I know we've
Mm.
got a couple of Germany. That's another market that's really starting to, we're
Yeah,
starting to
yeah,
see
yeah.
people grow
Yeah,
into.
it's the second or third biggest. Yeah, I'm not sure. So UK and Germany are always kind of very
Yeah,
close in terms of size, but I think it's US and then Germany, UK, and Japan, which is kind of the
yeah.
sequence of size.
Is there anything else that you can think of that really anybody who's never considered going to Amazon Japan should really know in their consideration of whether or not to do it?
What they should, well, they should check it out. I mean, if you have a brand, I mean, it's not that hard. So you can just open amazon.co.jp, and there is a little icon on the top right which says Japanese or English. So you can actually select English as the platform, as the browser language, and you can check out your stuff. I mean, if when whatever you're selling and you have any keyword in mind, just go to Amazon Japan and just check it out and see what you see. And you can even select the currency to show up in USD. So in the
Ah,
same
okay.
little bracket, you can select English as your language and you can select USD as your currency. So, and then you have to put a Japanese shipping address. So, and that is like 600 one, yeah, let me think. So you have to put like a Japanese postal code for the results to show correctly, because otherwise only like local shipments and FBA will show up and the other ones will not. But it's rather simple to just visit Amazon Japan and select English as your language and USD as your currency, and then on the first page result you will immediately have like a good impression, like what's going on. If garlic presses, what did I look like, how many sales you have, what is the price point, how many reviews. And more often than not, you will see that the amount of reviews is only a fraction of what you see in the US. And it's, yeah, so that's what I would recommend.
I want to thank you today for joining us on Ecom Insiders, which is sponsored by SPCTEK. Again, our guest speaker was Dano Falk. If you have any questions, you can leave them below in the comment fields. And if you enjoyed today's session, please subscribe to enjoy future editions of Ecom Insiders. Again, thank you, Dano.
Thank you for having me, Debbie. My pleasure.